question for the room is, how many of all of us favor a free and independent Alberta? Raise your hand, stand up. Free and independent Alberta. Stand up for a free and independent Alberta.
Most of the Expo Centre arena stood up in cheers and support. This caused the Premier to address the hot crowd.
Yeah, we'll be talking a bit about that more later, the wrap-up of the UCP AGM in Edmonton. Of course, yesterday was quite a speech for Danielle Smith. And we've got explosive news to talk about today about the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections in the United States. And this is going to shock you, or perhaps not. But we'll be back in mere moments with something perhaps a little more lighthearted.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
So here's a scene from the Parliamentary Press Gallery annual dinner, where, of course, the Prime Minister, leader of the official opposition, and party leaders are invited to speak and to be stand-up comics for the night. Everything's off the record. I think so. I've been to them in the past when I was a member of the press gallery many years ago. This is really worth watching.
As you know, Chris Stars on This Hour has 22 minutes, which is the second funniest satire on CBC after Power in Politics. You know, Chris is actually the most expensive comedian at the CBC. And in fact, the most expensive in the entire world if you measure on a cost per laugh basis. Now, just to be clear, to all the CBC staff who are gathered here today, don't believe what you hear. And by the way, when I speak of CBC staff, I'm not just talking about the PMO comm shop, I'm talking about all of you. I never said I was going to shut down the CBC. I said I was going to defund it, which means that we can find some creative funding methods to keep it going. Like maybe they could move their head office to a Caribbean tax haven so that Brookfield could pay for it. The company might have some spare office space above that bicycle shop in Bermuda. Or another revenue source would be for David Cochrane to start charging for the water he carries for the Liberal Party. The third way is for me to donate royalties. And I'm announcing that I will do that today. Royalties for all those who copy me, imitate me, or steal my ideas. I think Mark Carney is here today. He wanted to have an impersonator of his own, but then he discovered that Mr. Burns is a cartoon. But who's ready to tax the tax? Build the homes. Oh, wait a sec here. They gave me my speech for the January Conservative Convention. Geez, there's got to be some content in here I can use. Down with the out-of-touch elites. Oh, wrong crowd. I know. No more greasy lobbyists. Oh, that's not going to work either. Fire the overpaid consultants. Oh, I see Regan Watts is here tonight, so that's not going to work. All right. I guess we're going to have to settle for some more boring three-word verb-to-noun slogans like eat the food, drink the booze, fake the laughs. But it wasn't just the slogans that people criticized about my last campaign. Look, and fair enough, you know, we made some great gains. We added 25 seats, 2.5 million votes, but we need to get over the top, and that means making some adjustments, some changes, and that means I have to look inward into what changes I have to make. And I've been told since the election that I need to gain those extra few percentage points by being more lovable, and human. So naturally, I've commissioned a poll on how to do that. And the preliminary results are in. Option A, I can get a dog. Or option B, and I'm quoting the pollster here, I can find more meaningful ways to connect with people on a personal level and make emotional connections with Canadians. So I immediately called the pollster and said, what kind of dog?
Well, we might show some more of that later in the show. But who says Pierre Poilievre doesn't have a sense of humor? That was a great moment with Pierre. And like I say, he may surprise you. Here's the bombshell report today. Now, this has been out on the limited number of broadcasts, InfoWars among them, and Benny Johnson just released this morning. And it's all about, you remember all of those accusations about voting machines and stealing the 2020 election and the worries, the concerns about the 2024 election? Well, here's a report out, largely based on the research of one journalist, that is incredible because it essentially says it's all true. And the 2024 presidential election was almost stolen had it not been for Elon Musk and a couple of other guys who intervened and stopped the station in Serbia that was doing the dirty work. And now we'll let Benny explain. I'll have more about this tomorrow. But to get this news out, and this is incredible, because if you even talked about there being some huge irregularities in these presidential elections, you were immediately deemed as not just a conspiracy theorist. I mean, everybody's a conspiracy theorist now. You were deemed psycho, crazy, off the rails, and sued in many cases. People lost their jobs over this. People lost millions of dollars in defamation cases. This is going to be an incredible expose.
There's another destruction of that system that was laid bare yesterday. While we've been able to look at the incidences that seem extremely strange, right? Like, so since we took a second to get here, let's go ahead and look at like the Michigan ballot drop chart and the Wisconsin ballot drop chart. Like, these are really odd circumstances. Don't make any sense. It seems like just a bunch of votes were clearly added to the tallies of Joe Biden at exactly the time when you would add votes if you didn't want anyone to pay attention. Right? In the small hours of the night when everybody had gone to bed and no one was watching. Here's Michigan, here's Wisconsin, same thing, exact same chart, worse, I think you could argue. And you could see the clear trajectory. If these were two horses that were running a race, the Kentucky Derby, you'd obviously be able to see that one of them was going to lose and one of them was clearly going to win. And then something totally miraculous happened. I mean, if this were happening inside of a sports competition, you'd say either the game was rigged, the refs were paid off, somebody was using steroids, probably all of the above. Because what this shows is something that is totally and completely miraculous. Zoom, please. This shows something that defies the human understanding of how competition works. And this doesn't just happen. And in a thread last night from Emerald Robinson, what we see is that this was actually by design. So let's hop in here, finally. A few weeks before the 2024 election, Senator Mullen, former Senator David Perdue, finally arranged a meeting between Trump advisor Susie Wiles and the one man who could explain exactly how America's election systems are rigged. The meeting took place at Mar-a-Lago. This is all new information to me. Susie Wiles had publicly said that the election fraud was not real and that people that thought so were crazy. That's a matter of fact. Susie Wiles comes from sort of institutional Republican thinking. And that's all right. Obviously, there was no guarantee that this was going to be a winning message. In fact, there was a guarantor that some people who had run on this message, like Kari Lake, had been completely flonged, in the words of Donald Trump, and were not able to win their elections based on mysterious circumstances. Of course, the Kerry Lake race is a perfect example of what happens when you start questioning systems like this. These systems, of course, turn against you and are weaponized against you. Kerry Lake, in my personal opinion, did in fact win that election. Okay, let's continue. Susie Wiles heard a briefing on election fraud, ate a piece of cake slowly, and then asked for the entire Trump team to be briefed. Let's go. In the end, the man who was doing the briefing on election fraud stayed at Mar-a-Lago for 3 days to brief absolutely everyone. There was only one man who Susie Wiles trusted to confirm all of this, and it was Elon Musk. A call was made, and the man found himself in a room with Elon Musk. Musk declined to sit through the whole briefing. He just said, give me your data. Let's continue. So Elon Musk read the AI summary of the technical data, and then he picked up his phone and made a call. We have a problem. It's all true, says
It's almost impossible to prove cheating is the issue. So a lot of people on the Dem side will say there's no cheating, and I'm like, you've made it impossible to actually prove that there's cheating. But statistically, there are some very strange things that happen that are statistically incredibly unlikely. There's always this sort of question of, like, say, the Dominion voting machines. It is weird that I think they're used in Philadelphia and in Maricopa County, but not other places. Doesn't that seem like a heck of a coincidence? So I think we should, in my view, we should only do paper ballots hand counted. That's it. I mean, I'm a technologist. I know a lot about computers, and I'm like, the last thing I would do is trust a computer program, because it's just too easy to hack. It's too easy to add just one line, and it's really difficult to hack paper ballots.
Well, that's strange. Elon Musk saying that at the time. Sure, a tone change. Nobody heard Elon Musk talk like that before. Let's continue. Elon Musk said at the rally, there's always been a question about Dominion voting machines. It's weird how you're used in Philadelphia and Maricopa County. Doesn't that seem like a heck of a coincidence? You just heard the full clip. Let's continue. However, could the 2024 election steal be stopped in a few weeks before the election? The man who briefed Elon Musk, Patrick Byrne, and Gary Bernstein said that their team had recruited dozens of people who knew exactly how the rigged system was built in Venezuela. And they had worked for these companies. Continue. This group of whistleblowers were hiding in a hotel in Switzerland before the 2024 election, and that's when General Flynn flew out to see them. Flynn asked, how long has election fraud been going on? And they said in Venezuela, they rig it in 72 different countries for the last 20 years. Continue. The whistleblowers from Venezuela had video meetings with Musk team and Trump team to explain the technical details of the election fraud, and the most important detail, that Dominion IP addresses had been located. All it cost was $15 in Bitcoin from an anonymous Japanese account. All right, well, just how internet security works, man. Bitcoin will open it all, won't it? The relevant data and IP addresses were now verified, and that's when Senator Mullen came to the rescue again. A cybersecurity team got the data. 3 days before the 2024 election, the Dominion offices in Serbia was hit. Cyber attacks and their computers that they used to rig these systems were useless. On election day, nobody knew if the cybersecurity team had been successful in knocking out the Serbian computers. Everybody at Mar-a-Lago had to wait for the results. Man who briefed Musk flew to Oslo that day. They'd have to leave the USA if they failed. Imagine the moment on election day. Trump had no idea if he would win. Patrick Byrne watched from Qatar. Gary Bernstein watched from Switzerland. All of them would be hunted down if the 2020 election fraud was successful, and the USA would be finished. Just a reminder, at this exact time, Kamala Harris was going to all of the unions, some of them who had endorsed Trump, and told them that they are going to pay, braggadociously fronting that she, of course, was going to be the next president. There wasn't any question. At this exact same time, also, the pollsters who could be paid off, like Ann Seltzer in Iowa, were running polls that said that Kamala Harris is up in Iowa, a Trump plus 10 state that voted Trump plus 12, actually. Wasn't even a question, but they were running suppression polls. And the game was on. The Kamala Harris campaign was running entirely and totally on vibes, media hype, fake polls, fake interviews, canned Kamala speeches where she couldn't deviate from even a word on the prompter. It was completely and totally manufactured in order to create a moment where you could say, like, historically, so many black women showed up for Kamala. It's a miracle. The game was on. The rig was on. The operation was happening. It was happening in real time. We could all see it before our very eyes, and we all had a sort of really bad feeling in our gut about it as we were watching it happen. You all remember this. Trump.
Now, they tracked the IP address down to a place in Serbia, and Musk's team was able to hack into it and destroy it. That's how the election was saved. Now, we got a bit more here to show you from InfoWars today, because this is breaking as we're talking. This is incredible stuff here. And I want to show this to you first. There's a bunch of stuff. You can go through Emerald Robinson's entire posting here. And it's incredible what she's like. There's 30 or more of these posts up right now. I encourage you to watch this.
How long has this been going on? I am told that Flynn was even taken aback by the answer. They said, well, for at least 20 years and in 72 countries. When you ask why people don't want to touch it, there you go. This is going to have, it's going to have shockwaves that reverberate throughout the world when everyone understands what's been going on.
And by the way, they now have former high-level, highly decorated, most respected CIA section chiefs coming out and exposing that they've seen all the documents. They know this as well. So the point is, Trump's making a major move now with this coming out. That's why the Democrats are so freaked out and calling for a coup.
Yeah, and Gary Bernstein has been on this for many years. And in fact, he was also residing in Switzerland at the time of the U.S. election, because they knew if it didn't go, if they were able to steal another election, Patrick Byrne, Gary Bernstein, this guy from Venezuela, they were all dead meat. In fact, the guy who briefed at Mar-a-Lago, he'd actually flew to Oslo, Norway for the election, because if it went bad, like you said, they were going to arrest thousands of people. I've been told that I was on a list of 700 that was to be directly targeted in the second
I've talked to
term.
the DOJ that's seen the list. It was over 10,000 people, sweetheart. You're on it.
Yeah, we're all on it. So
that's good. We want to be on that list.
That means we're on the right side of history. But history, we have to make sure. I heard what Flynn said today. There's one more election. That's it. This is make or break. We got a lifeline in 2024 when these whistleblowers worked with Trump's, the tech guys, and ultimately Senator Mullen. Here's what they did. So this is probably my favorite part of the story, Alex, is that there had been a Japanese blogger who had apparently been watching the 2020 election and capturing the IP addresses during the 2020 election. He had put this on Twitter like some years before 2024 in research by the investigative team that I call the Three Musketeers, Gary Bernstein and this Venezuelan gentleman. They came across this data from the Japanese guy, and they asked him, they just DM'd him, okay, on Twitter, and asked him, can we get this data? And he essentially said, yeah, if you buy me a coffee. So for $15 worth of Bitcoin, like nothing, this guy sends them the IP addresses, the whistleblowers verify it. They give that over, as they're working with, we can say Trump's team. But it was really Senator Mullen who, again, comes in and saves the day and makes sure that the right people gets this information. The day of the election, no one knew what was going to happen because that was the end of it. They've done what they could do. The Three Musketeers, their team of what they've referred to them as different names, but bananas or visitors, that's the whistleblowers from Venezuela. They'd done what they could do. So they didn't know if it was going to work or not, right? But obviously we saw what happened on election night. I remember sitting there knowing what I knew, and I had researched since November 2020. I said, they can still do this. There's no way. I didn't know how he was winning because I knew they still had this capability. What I didn't know, and I found out in days afterwards or a couple months afterward, is that the threat had been neutralized. They had taken out that Serbian office. The IP addresses had pointed back there, but also recall, Sheriff Darleaf out of Berry County, Michigan, has released emails between Serbia, Dominion employees in Serbia, and Dominion employees in the United States, right? So that's also been verified there as part of discovery in an ongoing lawsuit. They managed to stop their computers from working, take out their servers, which, by the way, are Huawei servers, okay? They're Chinese hardware that they...
All right, so that's an incredible story there. And you say, what is Serbia involved with? Well, did you know Dominion had offices in Serbia? Now, Serbia is run jointly by a government and by the Serbian mafia. And I actually, when I worked at a nightclub once where I knew, or I strongly suspected, the guy who was renting the nightclub was involved with this kind of organization. And it was, Serbia is frightening. And that's, so thank you for Emerald Robinson for digging so deep into this story. And I encourage you to go through all of her posts. They're up. I've reposted a lot of them, but go to her X site, Emerald Robinson, and go through all 30 odd of them because it's incredible what she has documented. And so this means, yeah, Mike Lindell, the founder and CEO of MyPillow, is still being sued by Dominion Voting Systems as of November 30th, like today, 2025. Dominion filed a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit against him and MyPillow in 2021 over his false claims that the company rigged the 2020 U.S. presidential election. The case remains active and is scheduled for that trial in late 2025. Tucker Carlson lost his job over this, for talking about this. Fox News lost billions, tens of billions of dollars in defamation fees over this. Is this going to change any of that? My God, this is an incredible story because a lot of us knew that there was something going on in that election because of ballot boxes just being transported around cities, around states, and just showing up at a counting center. It's like ballot stuffing writ large, and it's incredible. Let's have a look at this here.
Дуже приємно вас сьогодні бачити. Ми вдячні. Дуже приємно вас сьогодні бачити. Ми вдячні, по-перше, Канаді за постійну підтримку. Дуже дякуємо прем'єр-міністрові, дуже дякуємо вам. Ви багато всього зробили для України.
Велика честь бачити, як ви і всі українці, як ви тримаєтеся. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Дякую. Дуже приємно вас сьогодні бачити. Ми вдячні, по-перше, Канаді за постійну.
So there's your corrupt president of Ukraine, the most corrupt country in Eastern Europe, and his days are numbered. Anti-corruption units raid home and office of Zelensky's chief of staff. It's game over for Volodymyr Zelensky, president of the corrupt Republic of Ukraine. And there, of course, was his good buddy, our special counsel to Ukraine, still member of parliament, former finance minister, former transport minister, Chrystia Freeland. And there she is, hobnobbing with this man who's on his way out. It's just about over for this man. And here's an incredible, this is, you tell me if you see this. Oh my God. That is just a little bit much to watch. Yeah. It appears that there's cocaine coming out of his nose because he apparently didn't sniff it well enough. Incredible. Don't worry. That's your back. I stand with you, Kane. So, you know, I look around me, folks, and I say, this is why the world is a cesspool, because it's being run by people like this. I don't know if Zelensky's ever had a truly sober moment as president. And this is the corrupt regime we have been financing in Canada to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. And it's time to say enough. Yes, it's time to say enough. Okay, back to the Canadian news. Oh, nice to see people have joined the show. Thank you for watching today. I know it's an odd time on Sunday. It's been it's been quite a morning. We're being deluged with a snowstorm here in Ottawa, and I haven't even gotten out the shovel yet. So there you go. But encourage you to share this broadcast with your friends and family, because I am getting suppressed in the worst way in the last week. And all of you who say, don't forget the ostriches, I'm not going to forget. Obviously, I can't do every show completely about the ostrich farm, because right now it's reorganizing. And, Katie has got other plans to start an organization, which I'm 100% behind and will be helping her. And if those of you who don't like me helping her with fundraising, I don't care if you like it or not, I'm going to continue to do that. But here, let's get back to Alberta here. And I think one of the heroes of this UCP, that's the United Conservative Party annual general meeting, was my good friend Jeff Rath, who had the guts to stand up and say, a lot of people here support Alberta independence. And he got a standing ovation for that. And we'll see that in a minute. So what was the result of all this? So the new UCP board members elected today are pro-independence. The ones I circled, this is from Marty up north, the ones I circled are part of the establishment. So it's like the old versus the new, the old versus the young. So if you're reading reports that it all went smooth sailing for Danielle Smith, not quite true. Not quite true. And of course, here's some more scenes in this convention.
question for the room is, how many of all of us favor a free and independent Alberta? Raise your hand, stand up. Free and independent Alberta. Stand up for a free and independent Alberta.
Most of the Expo Centre arena stood up in cheers and support. This caused the Premier to address the hot crowd.
Yeah, here's the Premier.
I support a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I know we might have a bit of a difference of opinion on that, but I hope people today feel a lot more confident that Canada works than they did a couple of days ago.
Alberta is winning, and we will.
Now, I'll tell you how. I'll get to this clip in a minute. I'll tell you how Danielle Smith saved her political career yesterday. This was a masterful speech because She managed to talk about Mark Carney without once saying Mark Carney. She managed to give a ringing endorsement of this pipeline project, even though she really didn't have any evidence that it was going to come to fruition. She managed to talk about vital conservative issues, and we'll show that in a minute. But she addressed it right away, and she did not try to sideline the members of her party who disagree with her, who are pro-independence, who think the pipeline is a pipe dream, who think this is all nonsense and it's not going to happen. She managed not to sideline them or get them too hostile by talking around the issue. Then, of course, she got into the things that do make her popular with conservative voters and conservative supporters of this party, such as her stance on pornography in elementary schools, such as her stance on biological men competing with women in sports. These are hot button issues with conservatives, such as her stance that the police in Alberta not enforce Ottawa's gun buyback or gun control policies, hugely popular, such as her support for Alberta being a part of this industrial of the energy explosion that's bound to happen. But let's listen to how she dealt with criticism that she was in Mark Carney's pocket.
To win this battle for our freedom and provincial rights, because we are on the right side of history, and Albertans will not be denied our right to a prosperous future. Now, I know full well that so many of you here today have been justifiably, like me, frustrated and angry with Ottawa. I get it, trust me, I get it, I hear you. We have been abused and taken for granted repeatedly over the past decades. But my friends, let's not throw in the towel and give up on our country just as the battle has turned in our favor and victory is in sight. It is. It is. Not when our fellow Canadians, even those that may support differing political parties, are nonetheless supporting Alberta's vision for a prosperous, energy-rich nation with strong and sovereign provinces, building a Canada we can be proud of again. Now is not the time to give up the fight. Now is the time to double down and fight for both our province and our country, because we Albertans are indeed the proudest of Canadians, and we don't fight for the sake of fighting. We don't look for conflict when there is an opportunity for freedom and peace and prosperity with our fellow Canadians. That is all we've ever wanted: freedom and peace and prosperity, because Albertans are happiest when we are hard at work getting things done, solving problems, serving our communities, creating and innovating. That is when we are truly at our best. We want to lead this country towards a better and brighter future because we take great pride in that as a province. All we need is a government in Ottawa to get out of the way and let us turn Canada into a thriving energy superpower with Alberta leading the way.
Okay, very effective, but it's only effective if this doesn't unravel, if this doesn't come to naught. And let's listen to what Pierre Poilievre had to say about this the other day in the House of Commons.
Right, he can't tell us the year in which construction will begin. Can he tell us in what decade will construction begin on a new pipeline to the Pacific?
We cannot reach our climate objectives if we are not working with all of the provinces and territories. Today, Alberta has committed to work with us on clean electricity regulations. They have committed in this agreement to work towards a stronger industrial carbon price. They have committed to work with us on methane regulations. Those are important steps forward for Canada to move towards its climate objective, and we will keep doing that work.
So they don't know the year that construction will begin. They don't know the decade that construction will begin. And the Environment Minister couldn't even bring herself to utter the word pipeline in her answer to the question. And what today's deal allows a proposal for a pipeline to go to an office in 7 months, which will then be studied for 2 years, after which the Prime Minister will give a pipeline veto to the BC NDP Premier, who's already said he's against. Isn't this pipeline going to be built in the year never?
So that, of course, if that's the issue here. Is this thing going to get built? So you might say Danielle Smith, as leader of the United Conservative Party, has rolled the dice here and bet hugely on this coming to pass. And if it doesn't come to pass, this could be a split in the party that could be absolutely devastating in terms of Alberta politics, unless, of course, the split in the party leads to Alberta independence. But that's a big gamble. That's a big gamble for the supporters of Alberta independence. It's also a big gamble for Federalists to play hardball on this issue, because the United Conservative Party is keeping the NDP out of power. That was the purpose of the United Conservative Party. It was the union of the old progressive conservatives, who were just basically liberals, red Tories, and Wild Rose. Now, the United Conservative Party has taken on the credentials and the perspective and the ideology largely of the Wild Rose and not the progressive conservative. However, if this party splits, it's going to be chaos in Alberta politics. But here's how Danielle really tried. And it's apparent that the crowd had changed by the time Danielle Smith spoke. And she was an hour plus late to speak. And in that time, I'm hearing reports that over 500 people were moved into the convention area, moved into the convention room. And they were all Danielle Smith supporters and not supporters of the Alberta Prosperity Project and Alberta independence. So that might be why she had a much more sympathetic crowd given the standing ovations. And then she starts really tossing out the red meat.
Let's talk about freedom and justice. We all know that woke ideological policies such as the safe supply of drugs or soft on crime bail and sentencing rules, state-sponsored social engineering of children, and institutionalized censorship of speech are just a few examples of terrible NDP policies that have needlessly destroyed the lives of thousands in communities all across Canada. Albertans have had quite enough of watching this train wreck of left-wing ideas in action, and our government has stood firmly.
But of course, what she's not saying here is that the Mark Carney Liberal government is pursuing and pushing and promoting all of those policies she just said are so horrible. Transgender policies, censorship and surveillance policies. That's what the Carney government's all about. But she chose, of course, to focus on the provincial, the Alberta NDP, and not the federal Liberals, because she doesn't want to mention Mark Carney.
Dangerous and destructive policies when few other governments in the Western world would. Although I'm pleased to say that is changing a little bit more and more each day. And despite the continued hysterics of the NDP and their woke activists, Alberta will continue to march boldly forward with policies that promote freedom, save lives, and make our communities safe. This government will fund, not defund, the police. We will seek justice for victims, not excuses for the guilty. We will replace enabling continued drug use for the addicted with providing treatment and a means to recovery. We will lift up and support those struggling with mental health rather than giving them the means to end their lives because of it. And while governments around the world seek to institutionalize the censorship of free speech, our government will forge an accelerated path in the opposite direction. That's why last week our government, inspired by the attack on Dr. Jordan Peterson, as well as so many other doctors and lawyers and nurses and teachers and others, introduced legislation containing comprehensive free speech protection so that no professional will lose their license to practice due to their political beliefs or for not kowtowing to DEI and other destructive mandates.
So she's hitting all the bases. She is stepping on all the, and there's more than 4 bases here, 3 bases and home plate. She is saying everything she needed to say in this speech. She's consolidating her support. It's a brilliant political speech. I don't know how much of it was hers, how much it was her press secretary. I don't know how much committee work was put in it. I somehow think it was majorly her work, perhaps some input from a few communications advisors. But it's a brilliant speech. Will it work? Only if this pipeline pans out to some degree. Because Mark Carney is just as bad as Justin Trudeau. And there's no question about that. Something Jeff Rath, the legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, points out every time he's on the show. Don't give me this, that Mark Carney is a lesser danger and lesser threat than Justin Trudeau. Even if you just examine the corruption of the Mark Carney regime. Of course, she doesn't talk about that either, because this all depends on her getting along very nicely with Mark Carney. Eventually, that's going to catch up with her. I predict it's going to catch up with her, because Albertans will not like this unholy alliance, especially if it doesn't result in some tangible result like a pipeline. Yeah, she's getting a standing ovation for this. So, clearly.
Thanks, guys. That came from you. That was your policy passed last AGM. We're calling it the Peterson Law. But we aren't stopping there. I'm announcing today that next week, our UCP government will be introducing a new motion under the Alberta Sovereignty Within a United Canada Act that will, if passed in the legislature, instruct all provincial entities, including our municipalities and law enforcement agencies, to refuse to enforce or prosecute under the federal gun seizure program.
Now that, of course, is huge. She probably got the biggest standing ovation of the afternoon with that announcement. That's huge.
Now, the Sovereignty Act motion will also make it clear that these agencies will not enforce or prosecute Albertans defending their homes and families from intruders. I got a little tip for low-life criminals out there. If you don't want to get shot, don't break into someone's house. It's really that simple, isn't it? It really is. We want our great men and women in law enforcement and our justice system to spend their precious time and effort going after criminals, not farmers, not ranchers or sport shooters, nor Albertans defending their families and their homes.
Or farmers who have ostriches, because Danielle was the only premier to say those animals should be tested. And she also mentions the CFIA being out of control in this speech. Did I think it was a great speech? Yeah, it's a great speech. As the problems are, as I've already noted, this could all go to hell in a handbasket very fast if there are no results from this unholy alliance with Mark Carney. If Alberta gets nothing out of this, if this pipeline is not built, if nothing moves, and Mark Carney continues to be a woke politician who introduces censorship bills and endangers the freedom of Canadians. You're not going to convince me. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. You're not going to convince me that Mark Carney is just really at heart a blue liberal or a kind of a small c conservative type liberal. I don't believe that. He's a dangerous man. He's all about Mark Carney getting richer and richer, and Canada and Canadians getting poorer and poorer, spending your tax dollars. This is the same Mark Carney. He said every day is Pride Day. No longer Pride Month or Pride season. It's Pride Year. This is the same Mark Carney who wants to take away your free speech rights. It's the same Mark Carney who is literally 2 steps ahead or 2 steps behind Brookfield every time he goes on an overseas trade mission. The most corrupt government in the history of Canada. Danielle Smith can't change that simply by appealing to the strong ideological convictions of the small c conservatives and libertarians in her party, because ultimately you're left staring at Mark Carney, and it's not a good fit, and it's not a pretty sight. And that's what she's up against. The other problem, and I can't overemphasize this is hugely difficult for Pierre Poilievre as leader of the official opposition. Pierre Poilievre cannot get in bed with Mark Carney. Pierre Poilievre cannot praise Mark Carney for, and finally recognizing Alberta's right to its energy, finally recognizing Alberta's right to prosperity. Pierre Poilievre has to cast doubt on the viability, feasibility, inevitability of this pipeline. He has to. Otherwise, he becomes part of the Mark Carney government. He becomes appropriated by Carney's Liberal government. He has to oppose this. That puts him in a very difficult position. He's at loggerheads with his closest provincial political ally. He doesn't get along with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, the faux conservative. Danielle Smith is a true blue believer, generally. And I've got a lot of time for it. I've always said that. But Poilievre needs to be in unison with Danielle Smith. Not that he's going to lose scores of votes, but it does. It's not good, because Pierre Poilievre's seat is in Alberta right now. So this creates a lot of problems with the optics and with logistics, because they are not on the same page on this project. And that's going to lead to more problems for Pierre Poilievre. Anyway, thank you for watching today. I know the audience was a little smaller than usual. Please share this broadcast with your friends and family. I'm going to show the merchandise, and I'll be right back here. Yeah, with Mark Carney, the price of food is going up. Just love this. This is a sneak preview of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. Would remind you as well, get those ostrich stickers. Proceeds continue to go to Katie Pisitne and her family at Universal Ostrich Farms. And we're very proud to be part of that. Very proud. And we'll have Katie on the show again next week to talk about, hopefully, action she's taken to get the association off the ground. And we love these ostrich hoodies. I was wearing mine yesterday. Get yours today. Black, white, gray versions available. And, we're going to keep talking about this until the CFIA is brought to justice, and the people who perpetrated this massacre are brought to justice, because this won't end. This is not going to end because the Carney government wants it to end. Thank you for watching today, folks. God bless you. Godspeed on this Sunday. We'll see you again tomorrow. I got to write a Substack. Get that up for Monday morning, but I'm going to take the rest of the day off. Yeah, why not? It's almost 4 o'clock Eastern time. Take the day off, David. Thanks for watching. God bless.
Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I am going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Krayden, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.